Close your eyes. Let the stars fade behind your thoughts, and imagine snow falling over a world that never knew peace. Not the peace of silence, not the peace of warmth, but the kind that lives in stories, carried by the wind, remembered by firelight, buried in the bones of hunters long gone. This is Fenris, cold, wild, holy. Tonight, we drift into a tale whispered across centuries, a saga not carved in stone, but in flesh and fury. You will hear the name Ragnar Blackmane. Some call him a wolf, others call him hope. He was not born a hero. He was shaped by the storm. This story is not about glory. It is not about battle cries or empty victories. It is about change, about fire beneath ice, about the line between man and monster, and what happens when someone dares to stand between the two. So lie back, breathe slow, let your thoughts dim like torches in the snow. The tale begins not in war, but in a village where the stars seemed too far away, and a child looked up at them anyway. Tonight, Fenris howls, and we listen. Long before Ragnar Blackmane was known across the stars, before his name was sung in the great halls of the Fang, or etched into the memories of 1,000 battles, he was just a boy beneath a pale sky. Fenris is not a gentle world. It does not nurture. It does not forgive. Its oceans boil and freeze in the same breath. Its land breaks and reforms like the armor of gods. And yet, life clings to it. People survive, not through comfort, but through tradition, strength, and the old ways. High above, carved into the mountains, the Fang watches. It sees the tribes in the ice. It sees fire flicker in the dark. It sees the young ones grow. The Fang is more than a fortress. It is legend made stone. And it is where the wolves sleep. But the wolves do not choose at random. They listen. They wait. They watch the wild for signs. A flash of spirit. A moment of courage. The scent of something more. Only then do they send their watchers to the land below. And when they do, it is not to bless, but to test. This is how every saga begins, with hardship, with doubt, with blood in the snow, and with a choice. The snow never stopped falling on the northern ice shelf. It came sideways in the wind, then straight down when the skies cleared. It clung to skin, numbed fingers, filled the lungs if you weren't careful. In a world like Fenris, you learned early that warmth was earned, not given. Ragnar was born in one of the hill villages near the edge of the long frozen sea. They called it Morheim, though most just said the outer camp. It wasn't much to look at, just thick hides, sharpened stones, and smoke that never stopped climbing into the clouds. But it was his world. It was where he ran with boys who threw rocks at each other and wrestled until one of them bled, where the old ones spoke in low voices about hunts gone wrong or beasts seen near the lake. He remembered his father's hands, scarred, rough, strong, a hunter who never said more than needed. His mother hummed songs while sharpening blades. She had one green eye, one brown, and a gaze that stopped Ragnar in his tracks, even before he learned to speak back. There was no time for dreams in Morheim, but Ragnar had them anyway. Sometimes he thought he heard wolves at night, howling from the dark woods beyond the village firelights. Other boys were scared of them. Ragnar listened. He listened even when he couldn't understand the meaning. By the age of 12 winters, He could track footprints over ice, skin a kill, and run for miles with nothing but a water skin and a bone knife. He was smaller than some, but faster, always moving, always thinking. His eyes scanned like a hawk's, and he never let pride slow his steps. A good thing, because pride got many boys killed during the blooding. The blooding was what came next. No one talked about it directly. It was just something you knew was coming. When the sky changed, when the elders stopped looking you in the eye, when the meat from the hunt stopped tasting right. The signs were small, but clear. One evening a fire was lit higher than the rest. It burned green. That color meant only one thing. It was time. The chosen were given one night to rest. In truth, it wasn't rest. It was waiting. Mothers hugged tighter. Fathers handed down their weapons or words. Most said little. Nothing would help them now. Ragnar's father placed a small carved tooth in his hand. It had no chain, no words, just the gift and a nod. The next morning they were taken, not far, just beyond the ridge into a clearing where warriors waited. Not men from the village, not like anyone Ragnar had ever seen before. Their eyes glowed faintly. Their voices held something deeper than sound. They wore armor that shimmered like ice, but did not melt. And when they looked at you, it felt like being weighed. These were the Watchers of the Fang. They did not speak much, just told the boys to walk. So they did. For 2 days, through snow and silence, the group moved east toward the cliffs. No fire, no shelter, just one another. Some whispered stories about what came next. Creatures in the caves, visions sent by the gods, old ruins buried beneath the mountains. They reached the edge on the 3rd night. The air grew colder, not just in temperature, but in feeling, like the wind itself had turned to teeth. That night, the tests began. No one ever truly explained what the blooding meant. Each boy saw something different. Some claimed they fought wolves made of fire. Others walked endless tunnels under the sea. A few didn't return at all. Ragnar stood beneath the moon, not knowing if it would be his last time seeing it. Then the ground gave way. He fell, deeper than he thought possible, into a tunnel choked with dark. He couldn't breathe at first, couldn't move. But he didn't panic. He listened. There were whispers. Not words exactly, but shapes made of sound. Something was watching him. He began to walk. The tunnel led to a cave, and in that cave, a beast, huge, covered in white fur, eyes like frozen lakes. The creature did not roar. It breathed. Then it moved. Ragnar didn't fight it. Not with the blade, not with his hands. He knelt. He didn't understand why, but the gesture felt right. The beast came close. Its breath was warm. It did not strike. Instead, it howled. A long, deep call that echoed into his bones. And then everything faded. When he woke, he was in the snow again, frost in his hair, the carved tooth still in his grip. He wasn't alone. The warriors stood over him. One gave a small nod, and for the first time, smiled. "You listened," the man said. Ragnar didn't answer. He just stood. Something inside had changed. He didn't feel cold anymore. He didn't feel like the boy who'd left Morheim. The wind no longer felt like pain. It felt like invitation. And above him, high above the cliffs, the Fang watched in silence. The wind near the Fang cut different than the wind on the plains. It didn't just freeze the skin. It reached deeper, past the flesh, past the thought. It tested the spirit. Ragnar followed the warriors through a narrow pass. The ground climbed. Ice lined the walls. Their footprints vanished within seconds. Fenris didn't want to remember the path. That was clear. They said nothing as they walked. The warriors ahead carried no torches. Their armor gave off a soft blue light that pulsed with each step. Ragnar watched and matched their pace. His feet bled. He didn't flinch. Not once. At the peak stood a stone gate carved into the cliff. Shapes and runes filled the walls. Wolves, stars, flame and eyes. Many eyes, all watching. One of the warriors touched a mark and the stone moved, slow and heavy. Behind it, darkness. They entered without pause. The inside of the Fang was warmer than expected. Not soft, not kind, but alive. The halls breathed with heat, drawn from the mountain's veins. Fire pits lit the way. Smoke curled through cracks above, taking the scent of ash with it. There were others, dozens of boys. Some sat quietly, some shook. A few stared into the fire like they didn't see it at all. The ones who noticed Ragnar only nodded. They were like him, survivors of the blooding. Now they waited for what came next. A tall man entered. His armor was darker than the rest. Fur hung from his shoulders. His voice carried even though it never rose. "You were chosen by the Helix," he said. "It lives in you now. It will change you. You will suffer. You will forget your name. But if you survive, you will become more than man." The room held still. He looked to the fire. "One by one," he said, "into the flame." No one moved. Then a boy stood. Without a word, he stepped into the firelight. The warriors flanked him, steady hands guiding him toward a stone basin at the back. Inside, the liquid burned. Not like oil, not like fuel. It shimmered like heat made solid. The boy didn't scream. Not until the light took him. The others heard the sounds, saw the shaking. They could not look away. This was the trial of ice and flame. When Ragnar's turn came, he did not hesitate. He stepped forward and knelt. The basin's heat pulled the breath from his chest. He felt hands steady his arms. Then the liquid touched his back. It was not pain at first, not sharp, more like being filled with fire that had nowhere to go. Then it broke loose. The helix tore through him. Bones shifted, muscles burned. His heart thundered so loud it drowned out the world. He could not scream. He could not move. All he saw was light. In the light he saw wolves, not one, not two, a pack, running through fire, running toward him. He did not run. He stood. The light faded, the pain with it. When he opened his eyes, he was still kneeling, still breathing. But nothing inside him felt the same. He rose. The warriors helped him back, not with pity, with respect. He had passed. Not all did. Some never woke, some woke wrong. Ragnar healed fast, too fast. His body felt stronger, quicker. He could see in dim light, hear whispers through stone. He began to feel the shape of people even when they didn't speak. The helix was not done with him. It would never be done. Days passed, training began. Weapons were placed in their hands, not to teach them to fight, but to test how they did. Some lashed out, some hesitated. Ragnar did neither. He moved like he had on the hunt, fluid, alert, focused. The sergeants watched, always watching. In the Fang, time moved strange. There were no seasons, no village bells, no markets, just drills, meals, meditation, and memory. One night, Ragnar woke in his cell. His hands shook, not from fear, from the dream. He had seen the pack again. This time they were not running. They were circling, watching something in the dark, watching him. He felt their breath. He did not run. When the dream ended, he stood. Sweat ran down his arms. His heart beat slow, steady, strong. He knew then what the dream meant.
The wolves were waiting.
Waiting to see if he was one of them. And soon they would know. Ragnar stood at the edge of the cliff, eyes tracing the clouds as they drifted over the peaks. Behind him rose the vast stone halls of the Fang. Ahead lay the world he no longer belonged to. He was no longer just a boy from Morheim. The Helix had changed him. The training had shaped him. But what truly marked him now was the Fang. The fortress was more than stone, more than a place. It breathed with purpose. Each wall carried the echoes of oaths. Each corridor remembered footsteps of warriors long gone. Scalds spoke of the first days of the chapter, of Leman Russ, the Wolf King, whose rage and wisdom built the foundation they now stood on. His voice, it was said, still echoed in the wind that passed through the upper towers. Ragnar had walked those towers once, not as a warrior, but as a student. He followed his teacher, Brother Karlan, whose limp told of battles survived. Karlan spoke little but taught through movement. He showed them how to fight without waste, how to listen when others rushed, how to hold a blade like it was part of the body, not separate from it. Each morning began with cold water poured over skin, not warm, not gentle, just cold enough to remind them where they were. Then came the rituals, the runes drawn on armor, the chants that linked them to the warriors who came before. After that, combat drills, endless rows of motion, step, strike, recover, again and again. No one complained, not once. Their names had changed. No longer children. Now they were Bloodclaws, the youngest of the chapter, eager, fast, hungry for war. But war would not come fast. Not yet. Before they earned the right to join the great companies, they had to prove control, not just of blade or bolt gun, of the beast inside. The Canis Helix was never truly quiet. It stirred during moments of anger. It rose when blood was drawn. It whispered during dreams. Ragnar felt it most during sparring. His strikes came quicker than before, his senses sharper, sometimes too sharp. Once he broke a training weapon just by gripping it too tight. The rune priests watched closely, not just for skill, but for signs of losing control. Some recruits gave in to the Helix, lost to the Wolfen. Their eyes grew wild, their hands shook, and when the change took hold, there was no pulling them back. Those were taken away. No one spoke of them after. Ragnar stayed quiet most days. He listened more than he spoke. He watched his brothers, some brash, some cautious, a few reckless. He learned from each. He noted how others lost focus under stress, how pride made some strike too soon. He kept his strength guarded like a blade still in its sheath. One night, during a long watch shift on the outer wall, he heard the howl. It came from deep in the mountain range, carried through the air like a song with no end. Others didn't stir, but Ragnar stood still. The sound touched something old inside him. He didn't answer the howl. He didn't need to. It already knew him. Soon after, a new order came. They would descend to the valley. Not alone, not as scouts, but as part of a raiding pack. Their first real mission. Brother Carlin led them, his voice steady as ever, his words clear. "Remember your oaths," he said. "Not to me, not to the Fang, to each other." They moved out before dawn, across the snow, into a ravine where cultists had taken shelter. Word had come from nearby watchers, heretics building altars in the old stones. No threat to a full company, but enough to test blood claws. Ragnar's heart beat slow as they neared. He could feel the pulse of the mountain beneath his boots. His fingers did not tremble. When they struck, it was swift. No mercy, no noise but the clash of blades and shouts of those too late to flee. Ragnar moved with instinct, not wild, not loose, but clear. He stepped where he should, struck when needed, protected the ones beside him. The beast within stirred but did not rise. By the end, the fire burned in the cult's old shrine. Ash drifted through the valley like snow. The bloodclaws returned with silence in their steps, not out of fear, but out of weight. They had crossed a line, and on their return, the Fang felt different. Not because it had changed, because they had. Some days passed slow inside the Fang, others vanished like smoke. Ragnar never marked time the same way he had as a child. There were no seasons here, no days marked by sun or storm, only trials, lessons, memories. Yet something had begun to change. It started with his breath. Deep in the lungs he could feel it. Not sickness, not fear, a different kind of fire, one that didn't hurt, but waited. He began to sense things before they happened, not visions, not dreams, just moments. A faint sound behind a wall before it echoed, a movement in a shadow just before it stepped forward. His hearing sharpened, smells too, the blood of his brothers during sparring, the oil in the stone halls, the cold iron before a fight. At night, sleep came slower. His dreams felt longer. They stretched across hours, filled with snow and teeth. Sometimes he ran through the mountains, not as a boy, but as a shape. Not a man, not a wolf. Something between. He never woke with fear, but he woke hungry. Others noticed. Not just the rune priests, his packmates. During drills, he moved faster. His strikes hit deeper. He didn't mean to, but it was harder to hold back. Brother Carlin saw it. He said nothing, only watched. Then came the meditation. Once a week, they were called to sit in the deep chamber. No light, no sound. They were told to find stillness, to face the thoughts that stirred inside. Most sat in silence. Some struggled. A few trembled. Ragnar sat longer than the others. He thought of the snow near Morheim. He thought of the firelight before the blooding. Then he saw the wolves again. Not in motion, not running. Still. Watching. One stepped forward. Its eyes burned with cold light. Ragnar didn't move, didn't speak. He waited. The wolf lowered its head. Then, behind it, more shapes came. Not wolves. Men. Warriors of old. Clad in armor worn with time. They held axes, not raised, just resting. They did not speak. Ragnar stood. When the rune priests brought them back to the waking world, they asked each recruit to share what they had seen. Most spoke in half-truths. A few stayed silent. When they reached Ragnar, he said only one thing. "They're waiting." The rune priest nodded. No more questions followed. That evening he sat alone by the upper wall. The wind struck hard, but he barely noticed. He stared out across the ridges, down into the ice fields. Somewhere out there, the world he came from still turned. The village, the huts, the fire. But that world had let him go. In its place stood this new thing, a body no longer his own, strength not entirely earned, a hunger that pulsed under the skin, asking to be released. He did not fear it, but he didn't trust it either. Later that week, the training shifted, more intense, close combat drills, forced sparring, the kind that left bruises and broken edges. The Fang wanted to see what lived beneath their skin. It didn't want warriors who followed. It wanted wolves that could be called upon, that could be trusted not to turn. One of the recruits, Einar, lost control. Mid-drill, he struck too hard, kept striking. He didn't hear the calls to stop. He didn't see the hands trying to hold him back. His eyes burned with something else. The beast had taken him. It took 3 warriors to pull him down. Even then, his mouth foamed. His fingers bled from gripping too tight. They carried him away. No one spoke of where. Ragnar watched it all. He understood then how thin the line truly was. That night, he could not sleep. Not from fear, from clarity. The beast inside was not an enemy. It was a part of him. He could not kill it, could not bury it. But he could learn to walk beside it. He would not become the Wolfen. He would become something greater. His first true saga began under a red sky. A call had come from the north reaches. An outpost near the edge of the sea had gone silent. Not due to weather, not due to isolation. Something had taken root there. Something that fed on fear and silence. Ragnar was sent with a full pack. No longer just blood claws. They were young, yes, but tested. They carried honor markings across their armor. They had names now. Not only those given at birth, but those earned. Ragnar's came after the Frost campaign, where he saved 2 brothers under falling ice and struck down the heretic chief in a single charge. They called him Blackmane, not for his hair, though it was dark, not for pride. It was the way he moved in shadow, the way the night did not seem to weigh on him. The name stayed, the name grew. The pack descended toward the outpost, crossing broken ice bridges that swayed over black water. The wind sang like a blade. They moved without sound, every step measured, every movement watched by the sergeant. Signs of the outpost showed first in smoke. Not rising, but caught in the wind, blown low. A strange fire had burned through the walls, curling metal and stone together. Inside they found no survivors. Not torn apart, not wounded. Simply gone. Tables overturned, weapons unfired, meals left half-eaten. It was as if they had vanished mid-breath. Then they found the mark. On the main altar, a twisted rune carved deep into the surface. A shape not used by any tribe. Not used by the Fang. It glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that pulled the air inward. They backed away. The rune priest with them stepped forward, his voice low, his hand outstretched. He traced the mark in the air but did not touch it. He turned to the pack and spoke one word. Warpborn. That changed everything. This was no wild beast, no cult. This was corruption from beyond. The Eye of Terror was far from Fenris, but its shadow reached farther than most knew. They moved quickly. Search, clear, burn. But in the tunnels below the outpost, something stirred. Something that had once been human, twisted into a shape not made for light. It moved with sound that broke the ears. It struck without mercy. Ragnar met it in the narrow hall. No time for plans, no time for orders, just instinct. His blade moved fast, his body faster. The creature struck with claws longer than spears. Ragnar ducked, rolled, came up under it, drove the blade deep, not once, not twice, until it stopped. When the others arrived, the hallway was red, the creature still, Ragnar breathing hard but standing. That moment became his saga. Not for killing a beast, for how he stood after, not with pride, not with glory, but with stillness. He was offered a place in the Wolf Guard weeks later. Few bloodclaws moved that fast through the ranks. Fewer still earned it without question. But the rune priest saw something in him. Not just strength, balance. He had the fury. He had the fire. But he did not burn with it. He carried it. From that point forward, Blackmane was not just a name among recruits.
It was spoken in the halls with weight.
He had become a hunter not only of beasts, but of things far worse. The kind that hid in the shadows between worlds. And the Fang watched him closely. Not all sagas rise in fire. Some begin in silence, in the long stillness that comes after glory. Ragnar had earned his name. His blade had struck true. His place within the Fang was no longer questioned. Yet something inside him shifted. A weight he could not name had settled behind his eyes. It began after the raid on the Black Tower, the one where his pack fell. Not all, but enough to change the sound of the hall when they returned. One brother lost beneath the stone, another left broken in body. One did not return at all. A scream in the dark, a name never spoken again. Ragnar survived. He led. He fought. But in the quiet moments when the drills ended and the chants faded, he felt alone. Not without brothers, without balance. The rune priests said nothing. They watched, as they always did. Some warriors drift in these moments. Some find rage. Others seek the path of the lone wolf. Ragnar did neither. He left the Fang for a time. Not through defiance, not from sorrow. He asked to walk the old paths, the long trek across the high ridges where few dared to go. A place where no orders reached, where the wind did not carry sound, only thought. It was not exile, it was reflection. The elders granted his request. He took no armor, only furs. No weapon, but a short blade. He carried dried meat, a skin of water, and the black stone given to all who walked that path. Not to guide them, but to remind them. Each step through the ridges spoke of memory. Every gust of wind carried echoes from old campaigns. He passed ruins buried in frost, statues broken by time, names faded by wind. He saw fire in the sky one night, not from stars, from a burning wreck far above the mountains. He watched it fall, trailing light like a spear cast by the gods. Still he did not return. The dreams came again, wolves in the snow, their breath warm, their eyes calm. One walked beside him, never spoke, just watched. He did not try to follow it. He let it lead when it wished. He walked when it stopped. On the 6th night, snow buried the ridge. He found shelter under a ledge, pressed tight against the wall. No fire, no warmth, only the sound of his own breath. It slowed, matched the rhythm of the storm. He thought of his fallen packmate, the one whose name he did not speak. He did not mourn. He remembered. That was enough. The next day he returned. The Fang loomed tall in the distance. Smoke rose from the towers. He reached the gate without a word. The guard let him pass, no questions asked. The stone he had carried was placed at the base of the Fang's great staircase, one among many. The rite was done. He entered the Hall of Echoes, a place where sagas were kept, not in ink, but in voice. Old skalds sang of battles long faded. Warriors placed tokens at the foot of statues. Some prayed, others watched. Ragnar sat, listened. A voice told of the Night of Red Moons, a raid where a single warrior held the pass against a tide. He did not fall, but he did not return unchanged. He came back with silence in his steps, with the look of someone who had spoken with shadows. Ragnar understood that look now. Not all growth came from battle, some from stillness, some from the weight of memory. He stood once more. The Fang did not greet him with cheers. It welcomed him with open gates, and the fire burned just as it had before. A fire burned in the great hall that night, higher than usual. Flames cracked loud against the stone. Shadows danced across the walls. It was not a feast. It was a marking, one not held often. Ragnar stood before the flame, his armor cleaned. His shoulder bore the mark of the Blackmanes now, not as a bloodclaw, not as a wolf guard, but as a hunter who had returned from the silence. The company had changed since he left. New faces filled the ranks, some eyes young, some hard. A few met his gaze with quiet nods. Those who knew him, who had fought beside him, stood close. They did not speak. They didn't need to. Ulrich the Slayer entered the hall. His voice alone quieted the room. He spoke of trial, of loss, of fire that does not burn out even in cold. Then he spoke of Ragnar, not as a hero, as a reminder, a symbol of change, of strength found through struggle, not only through war. The skalds began the chant, a slow rhythm, no words at first, just the beat of hands on stone. Then came the name, Blackmane, spoken once, then again. This was not praise. This was tradition, the old way, when a name became more than a name. That night Ragnar left the hall and climbed the outer steps alone. The sky stretched wide above. Stars flickered cold. Fenris watched him. He let his breath slow. His hand touched the edge of the stone rail. Then, across the ice plains below, a howl rose. It was not close, not far either. It held something different, not hunger, not fear. A call, a knowing. Ragnar listened. He did not return to his chamber. He sat under the open sky until the sun rose pale behind the peaks. He didn't sleep, didn't move. He let the silence speak. The next day, he met with the great wolf. Logan Grimnar stood tall, his beard streaked with frost and age, his eyes sharp, his words few. He looked at Ragnar, then handed him a relic, a chain carved from the bones of a long-dead beast. No name given, no task explained, only this: your path is your own now. With those words, Ragnar understood. He would not stay behind the Fang's stone walls. His path reached beyond, to the stars, to places where fire met void, where the howl had to rise, even when the night seemed endless. Before he left, he visited the old chamber, the one where the stone tokens were kept. His hand touched the mark he had left there after the Ridgeline trial. He added a small one beside it. New, not for himself, for the name never spoken. The brother lost in the tower raid. Not all sagas are sung loud. Some are carved quiet. He turned, stepped into the storm, and began the long descent down the Fang's side. The sky opened. The wind followed. The saga of Ragnar Blackmane would no longer be told only in the north. The stars were waiting. The ship that took Ragnar from Fenris was old. Its hull bore scratches from asteroid fields and battle scars from forgotten wars. Inside, the air was thick with incense and machine oil. Voices echoed in narrow halls. The journey away from Fenris was not one Ragnar took with joy, but he accepted it. He had been chosen to serve as a wolfblade. Few space wolves were given this duty. It was not about war. It was about presence. Strength held close, hidden behind the veil of courtrooms and high towers. The wolfblades guarded the heads of House Belisarius on Terra, a noble family tied to the Imperium's highest circles. Political power rested in their hands, but they lacked warriors who could strike without warning. That's why the Fang sent its own. When Ragnar arrived, he did not wear his full armor. His weapons were smaller, his voice quieter. This was a place where the roar of a bolter meant less than a raised eyebrow. He stepped into a world where each word carried layers of meaning, where silence could be sharper than a blade. At first, he did not trust it. In the high halls of Terra, everything was polished. Marble floors stretched beneath banners that never touched the dust. The people here moved slow, their steps measured. They wore robes instead of armor, masks instead of faces. But danger still lived there. Assassins wore perfume. Enemies smiled before they struck. Lies were weapons. Secrets passed in folded paper or behind sealed doors. Ragnar had fought beasts on Fenris. He had faced the warp's corruption in frozen caves. But here, every move had to be watched. Every whisper meant something. He served beside two others, veteran wolfblades from different companies. They taught him when to speak and when to remain still, when to show his teeth and when to let others fear them instead. One of them, Haldor, explained it best. You are not the blade, Ragnar. You are the promise of what happens if the blade is ever drawn. Ragnar listened, not because he agreed, but because he knew the lesson had weight. Time passed. He followed the nobles through trade halls and council chambers. He stood behind them during peace talks that were anything but. He saw how power twisted even the pure. He learned names that ruled from behind walls, names most would never hear in the outer worlds. One day, a child of House Belisarius was taken. No ransom, no sign of the attackers, just silence where a voice once lived. The halls were swept, guards questioned, none had answers. But Ragnar found the scent. It lingered in the stone, in the folds of cloth too carefully placed. He followed it without speaking, down stairwells not listed on any map, past doors guarded by faces that pretended not to notice him. In a chamber beneath the palace, he found them, a group dressed in robes marked by forbidden symbols. They stood around a stone slab, speaking in low tongues. The child lay still. Ragnar moved without pause. He broke the circle. They screamed, tried to flee. He did not let them. It ended fast. He did not explain when the others arrived. He did not answer the questions. The child lived. That was enough. House Belisarius changed after that. Their words came with more weight, their gaze sharper, and Ragnar's place shifted. He was no longer just a guard. He was a warning. In that role, he learned more than any lesson from the Fang's stone halls. He saw how the Imperium truly lived, how far it reached, and how much it had forgotten. He missed the cold, the snow, the songs of Fenris. But he also saw why the galaxy needed wolves who walked among men. He was no longer only a warrior. He had become the blade they never wanted to draw, but always kept close. The stars above Terra did not burn like those above Fenris. They flickered softer, veiled by clouds of ash and light. The sky seemed closer, like a ceiling instead of a path. Ragnar often stood near the landing decks, watching ships rise and vanish. Each one carried a different world inside it. His time as a wolfblade was nearing its close. He had served well. Guards whispered his name when no lords could hear. He had proven that the wolves of Fenris could walk among kings and speak with their eyes alone. Yet something deeper called to him. It was time to return to the stars. He left Terra with no ceremony. The halls he once guarded faded behind steel doors. The city of gold and secrets vanished into distance. The Fang had summoned him. But his return would not be slow. His path crossed many voids, each darker than the last. A fleet had gone missing near the orc-held systems of Glazgak. Entire vessels lost without trace. The Imperium whispered of warp storms and green moons. Some blamed pirates. Others knew better. Ragnar arrived on the Frost Howl, a strike cruiser already bearing signs of battle. Its hull had deep burns. Its crew looked worn. These were not fresh warriors. They had seen something they didn't know how to name. Logan Grimnar had sent the order. The Blackmanes would lead a purge. Ragnar met his new brothers in silence. Some knew his name. Some tested him with gaze or tone. He met each one with calm strength. Rank meant little among the space wolves. Trust was earned in blood. They made planetfall under cover of cloud. The orcs had built twisted towers of scrap, clawed machines rumbling across black sand. But the wolves of Fenris did not strike head-on. They moved through shadow, swift, measured. Each step forward brought signs of something wrong, not just the work of orcs. Symbols marked in dried ash, circles burned into the ground, not their doing. The warp had touched this place. The first ambush came near the old refinery. The orcs charged with sound and smoke, roaring as their engines tore through the night. The Blackmanes stood firm. Ragnar moved through them like wind through broken trees. His blade flashed, his voice clear. He called orders between strikes. His presence did more than lead. It steadied them. But deeper in the ruins, the true enemy waited. Not orcs. Something else. Behind rusted doors they found a chamber. Cold. Still. In its center stood a being wrapped in bone and flame. It did not move. It watched. A demon. It had fed on the blood spilled here. It had grown slow, waiting for more. It spoke in a voice not made for ears. Ragnar did not answer. He raised his blade. The fight tore through the chamber. Steel cracked. Flame rolled. One of his brothers fell. The rest did not stop. Ragnar pressed forward step by step. He did not shout. He did not call for aid. He faced it alone. When the creature broke apart, its scream faded into dust. After, the ruin began to collapse. The Blackmanes pulled free just before the ceiling gave. Outside, the clouds had parted. The stars above burned clear. They did not cheer. They buried their fallen and marked the place with a black spear. The threat was gone, but the stain would linger. As they lifted off, Ragnar stood at the viewport. The world turned slow beneath them. He knew there would be more like it. Worlds touched by war, by things unseen, by the long shadow cast from the eye.
The Imperium had many warriors,
but few like the sons of Russ. They were hunters in a galaxy that had forgotten how to watch the dark. And Ragnar had only begun to answer that call. The world of Kalak burned under 3 suns. Its fields turned to glass. Its towers melted into shadow. The enemy had come fast, dropping from the sky with weapons not seen before. The defenders cried out. No help came, until the Blackmanes arrived. Ragnar stood at the edge of the landing bay, his cloak shifting in the wind. He did not look back at the warriors behind him. He trusted them. What came next would not be won with numbers. It would be won by choice. The High Council of Kalak had sealed themselves behind energy walls. They feared what lay outside more than they feared failure. Ragnar had no patience for cowards who ruled from behind glass. He didn't wait for approval. His plan was not the one the fleet masters wanted. He proposed a strike too deep, too fast. He would lead only 12 warriors into the core zone. No artillery, no cover, just speed and surprise. Many called it madness. Grimnar approved it with one word: go. They dropped at dusk. The sky lit orange, their path carved between towers split by fire. Ragnar moved first. His axe hummed, his eyes fixed. Behind him, the Blackmanes followed. They tore through the outer lines, moved past broken walls. The enemy was quick. Not orcs, not cultists. Mercenaries trained in void warfare. But they had never faced wolves. Inside the control hub, the data vaults pulsed. The enemy planned to drain the last of Kalak's life into the warp. A ritual hidden behind logic and wires. Ragnar's strike hit just before it began. The fight inside was tight, no room for error. His team split into pairs, each strike measured, each move taught from fire and ice. Ragnar found the lead figure in the upper tower, cloaked in black armor, face hidden behind a mask marked with false sigils. They spoke once. "You are late," Ragnar answered with steel. The fight shook the chamber. Windows shattered, blood traced the walls. When it ended, the mask broke open. No face inside, only smoke. The device linked to the ritual still pulsed. It was alive, hungry. Ragnar looked to his brothers. No time to leave, no time to call help. He stepped forward, pulled the core from the device, threw it from the tower with one arm. It exploded in the air far from the city. The shockwave cracked the spire. His team pulled him free as the roof gave way. They ran under a sky lit white. When the ships returned, they found Kalak still standing. No one understood how it had been saved. Only the Fang knew. Ragnar said little after. He stood beside the wounded, helped carry those who couldn't walk. He ate last, slept little. The name Blackmane carried new weight, not just for what he killed, for what he saved. The old skalds say gambits are moves made with heart more than mind.
That day, Ragnar showed both.
And the howl that rose from Kalak's ashes was not one of sorrow. It was a beginning. The edge of the galaxy held no maps. It stretched out into regions too dark for reliable signal, where systems spun in silence and old data drifted with no anchor. It was there the Blackmanes were sent. The world had no name. A forgotten rock caught in the pull of a dying star. What brought the Fang's attention was the message. A repeating code carved into an astropath's vision. The voice in the dream called not for rescue, but for silence. It begged the Imperium not to answer. The Blackmanes did not ignore warnings. They followed them. The drop was slow. The ship pressed against an atmosphere that pushed back. Static clawed at their comms. Lights dimmed for half a breath. Ragnar did not speak. He placed his hand on the side rail as they descended, eyes fixed on the grey land below. They landed near a ridge where ancient towers bent under their own weight. The stone looked soft, but held against the touch. Symbols were carved into every flat surface. Not fresh, not clean. Old marks buried in shadow. They circled back on themselves in ways that turned the eye wrong. The wind carried no sound. The Blackmanes moved without command. They entered the outer chamber in formation, but the structure did not match any they knew. The walls seemed to shift behind them. Paths curved without turning. No tech functioned right. Auspex gave false echoes. Lights flickered on steel that shouldn't reflect. They found bodies not long after. Human. Astartes. Not space wolves. Unknown origin. Their armor faded under touch. Their helms opened to reveal faces frozen in surprise. No blood, no wound. Just silence caught in flesh. One stepped closer to Ragnar and paused. His eyes caught emotion in the dark. Then the tower spoke. Not with voice, with memory. Images spilled through the walls. Shapes walked behind the stone. Something inside the planet had once seen the stars open and close. It had not moved in eons. Now, it stirred. The rune priest moved to the center and began the rite. A chant to still the warp. A call for the All-Father's light. The air did not resist. It listened. Ragnar raised his weapon, not in fear, but in preparation. The thing that rose from the floor had no shape. It unfolded like thought. Its limbs reached where space should not allow. Its eyes burned without light. The Blackmanes did not hesitate. They moved in concert. Strike, pull, shift, cover. Ragnar's voice cut through the static. The fight had no rhythm. It pulsed like a wound. But their blades landed true. Their force held. The thing recoiled and folded into itself again. It did not fall. It withdrew. That was enough. The tower began to break. Stone peeled from the ceiling. Walls bent inward. They pulled out as the structure collapsed behind them. No words were spoken during the ascent. The silence wrapped around them again. Back aboard the ship, Ragnar stood at the viewing port. The star below the planet pulsed once and dimmed. The system grew colder. They left a warning beacon behind. No message, just a symbol. The mark of the Fang. Some places are not meant to be named. The Blackmanes moved on. But the thing that stirred beneath the surface would not forget. And neither would Ragnar. The stars above Fenris moved slow, pulled by time older than any living thing. In the high halls of the Fang, the fires still burned, and voices still echoed through the stone. New bloodclaws sat near the hearth, listening to the scolds. They leaned in when the name Ragnar was spoken. They knew parts of the story, but not all. No single voice held the whole of it. That was how true sagas lived. They grew with each telling, shaped by the speaker and by silence. Ragnar Blackmane was no longer only a warrior. His deeds had passed into something larger. His name had weight in the warp-torn sectors where few dared speak imperial truth. The mark of the Blackmanes was seen on walls deep in collapsed hives and etched onto drop shields in ruined outposts. In systems left behind by the rift, people repeated stories about a tall figure who walked without fear and left nothing behind but ash and quiet. The Blackmanes continued to fight. They followed Ragnar into places maps refused to show. They closed breaches, recovered relics, burned seeds of ruin before they took root. Some of them never returned, but those who did carried the same look. Not fear, not pride, purpose. Ragnar spoke less as the years moved forward. He gave orders with a glance. He knew the path before the scouts. The rune priest said his dreams had grown long, that he sometimes walked the halls in silence before missions, as if listening for something behind the walls. One campaign led them far beyond the rift, where a signal blinked once every cycle. It came from a void station built before the Imperium had reached Segmentum Pacificus. No one had stepped on it in 2,000 years. The doors still opened when they arrived. The halls inside were clean. The lights flickered, but the machines worked. Voices echoed, not through the vox, but through the steel. A name was spoken in a forgotten dialect. Ragnar listened. He raised his hand. The squad stopped. They found a core deeper than expected. In it, a vault, untouched. Its walls marked with signs that crossed time and language. Ragnar placed his palm on the seal. It opened. Inside was not a weapon, not a threat. A scroll, old, wrapped in the leather of something not from this galaxy. Ragnar read it once. Then he set it aflame. Not every secret was meant for keeping. They left the station intact. No message sent. No records made. What matters is not what was destroyed.
What matters is who remembers.
When they returned to Fenris, Ragnar stood beneath the Skyfire Gate again. The wind moved across the peaks. No one came to greet him. The Fang did not need to. The last mark he made was not on a blade or wall. It was a step taken down a narrow path leading to the wild cliffs where Skalds rarely go. He walked alone. The saga had not ended. It had returned to where it began. Some say they still see him there, just before the snow rises. Others hear the howl, low and steady, in the wind that moves through the stone.
No one speaks too loud when they feel it.
Some truths are meant to echo, not be answered.